This engraving was created as the frontispiece to a book by Beroalde de Verville entitled The Table of Rich Inventions, printed in 1600. The book itself provides a summarized translation into French of the Hypnerotomachia, or Strife of Love in a Dream, a wonderfully elaborate Italian Renaissance allegory published 100 years earlier in 1499. Beroalde was convinced that the Hypnerotomachia had hidden in it alchemical secrets, and his book is an attempt to contextualize his work within alchemy. To this end, he wrote a steganographic preface in which he presents an elaborate allegory of his own, supposedly to show us the alchemy hidden in the work. In a section of this allegorical preface, the nymph Nephthys describes to us some emblematic figures she had seen in the Palace of Wisdom, and these are depicted in the emblem. This emblem is not entirely explicable within the tradition of alchemical symbolism, as Beroalde imposes his own elaborate allegory as a layer on top of this. We will try and see this emblem through Beroalde's eyes. Thus the descriptive explanations presented here are taken directly, though in summarized form, from Beroalde's own commentary on the engraving in his steganographic preface. On the right side is the effigy of the patriarch, the first to practice the alchemical science of perfection. This great philosopher is seated on a beautiful marble throne speckled with mosaic gold. The nymph describes the venerable figure of the fine old man on the throne as having an elongated beard, while in his mouth is a crescent whose horns point heavenwards. Below his feet is the figure of the sun. In the preface, the nymph explains that he holds in his hands the book of glory, sown with flames and drops of water, in which the whole book is written, and these two elements contain the two hieroglyphic designs of the fateful bow, which naturally is the product of two substances. The nymph then continues, saying that this mystery made us ask where might be the key to open the volume. It was tied to the neck of the patriarch, hanging from a chain, and made from the true golden leaf of the foliated earth of the wise. Just as she was further explaining this to us, the great serpent Orthomander darted from his waters and made a great noise as he was frolicking in the flowing waves. Here we see him swimming in the billows and causing great tremors, as, with his flaming wings, he was diversely mixing the contrary qualities of fire and water. At the front of the hall below was the true picture of the veritable chaos, out of which comes the alchemical substance we hope to find. Here we see earth thrown indifferently here and there amidst running waters. Gold was found in the watery waves and distilling out as drops in the air, indistinguishable from fires burning at random in this confused mixture. In this chaos are all the planets, the moon towards the east, Mercury in the north, the sun in the west, and Venus in the south. Mars was placed between the sun and Mercury. Below the sun, Saturn shines forth, and Jupiter was seen in a more westerly position. In the middle of the chaos, a little globe fortunately appears, which is the eminent place of everything that is useful in this alchemical work. At the focal point of its treasures, two substances appear, which are indeed distinct facets of one substance, whose mercurial form is a drop, and whose sulfurous form a flame. From these two is mixed the unique perfection, the abundant simple, composed without parts, the only indivisible known to the wise, from whence proceeds the bough of destiny, which spreads widely even beyond the chaos, giving birth to a fine tree growing quite tall, and more than 3 times higher than the rising flames that nourish themselves at its roots. The nymph tells us that a demon happens by, suddenly cutting the ripe branches and making them fall into the fire so as to continue to nourish it with its permanent radical substance. Beyond the fire we see the battle of the two ancient snakes, newly born and yet so well nourished that already they are quite perfect. They are so full of strength that the one that slides on the earth, not wishing to yield to the one that is winged, nor he to the other, they are joined in cruel battle. Those ancient writers were malicious and misleading when they suggested that they swallowed one another, the one seizing with his mouth the tail of the other, and that thus they mutually caused each other to die. This is not so, but rather these snakes strangled one another, and each squeezed one so strongly by the tail, tying it to each other in a rage that they extinguished one another. The flying one spread its wings upon the earth to receive their bodies, which were then united together in their putrefaction, from which they must come out again, not as two, but as one, as if they are born from one mother at the same time. This rebirth will be the pure substance that, interweaving itself in the bough with the blood of the dismembered lion, shall graft the tree from which will spring the worm, from which the phoenix shall be made, which growing perfectly will become larger than its nest, and more widespread than the tree, which itself lacks that complexion of soul which is informed in the phoenix. The phoenix extends its wings with joy, and grows in perfection hour by hour. This perfect bird, having become rare, may, because of its pure qualities, fly to heaven, to the planets, and even frolic at the centre of the earth. It holds in its left claw a magnificent horn of plenty, from which falls, as a symbol of happiness, a flowering rose, which then drops perfumed petals, one of which falls upon an old tree stump. From this, through its enlivening touch and generative faculty, a little leaf is born, which becomes a light branch from which drops a tear, which transforms itself into a fountain of youth, upon which presides Janus, who becomes a child and appears to us having two faces of plump children joined inseparably above the point of the fountainhead. Now is the beginning of resting after the terrible labours that one has suffered in this quest. For he who will manage to recover one floweret from these flowers shall obtain from this abundant fruits, and will have the sacred pledge and the holy deposit that must be offered to Alchemical, the idealized female figure in Beroalde's allegory, to partake of her good graces. Whosoever shall taste the liquor of this fountain will be assured to be able to withstand all the harsh hardships wherein one must be hardened, following the tracks of love. Whosoever will be able to excite the lively flame that sometimes explodes like lightning from the ardent humour of this drop will be able to light his lamp, that shall lead him into the secret cabinet wherein is received the contentment of the happy enjoyment of Alchemical. Without the explanation in his steganographic preface, we would be at a loss to fully grasp the narrative of this emblem. For example, we now clearly see that we have to read it clockwise from the 4 o'clock position. Also, many of its individual components would be impossible to fully understand without the clues revealed in Beroalde's commentary. Without a close reading of the preface, one would be left merely projecting one's own interpretation onto the work, and thus not truly encountering the real meaning woven into this emblem.